See, in that one, the reed, but the other one has no reed. It seems as if, let's see if this is clean. So the light is better in one's bathroom. You can see the reed. Or just check the Instagram photograph. This camera is very bad quality, but the reed is really as if it is sewn on top of the reed. So, but I'm not certain it is a reed. I foresee it is some sort of, but a non-leather. It is all. It seems as if it was a sort of cloth reed, a sort of ripped cloth reed, made of ripped cloth. And the stitch is, imagine this tube, imagine that cup is the reed, or the cloth reed, since it does not seem to be metal. Well, the stitching, and this would be the gossamer of the hat, the stitching goes through this, and this here, that tissue would be the leather band, and goes through the leather band, and closing the reed, and then goes through back, and so on and so forth. So, simultaneously, I thought this is how it is done. So see, the hat shapes are quite different, the sizing is different. I remember saying this was a 14.5 in another video, in the silk top hat construction video, the first one. Then there's another one later on, but see that one, although this for smaller head, it is quite evident that this is still a higher crown, and it looks even more high since it is for a smaller head, and that the brim being more curled. Also the brim, if anything, is perhaps, that might just tell from here. If anything, the brim is a little bit wider. Just from the rock of eye, it seems, just from feeling with the burn of my thing, it seems like this is a few millimeters longer, but it seems ever so slightly narrower, since it is so much more curled than that one. That's quite very different styling. This is much flatter, much more like the fashion of the 20s or 10s, which were more flat, more discreet, way more like, you know, less extravagant in, at least in terms of hat. Flatter and straighter, and it's actually, my mother, when showing her the hat before purchasing it, she did not like it, but I told her it was the only one that would fit. She did not like it. What is the other one? It was a 58. I was looking for a 58 because ideally my blow here where I had this outerwear is a 57.5, but I wanted it a tad larger and I was right to, for it still does feel snug. And he didn't measure it for me. Also, many sellers do not actually answer the question, but it ever so seems like this one gives the impression that this is almost wider than the base, and that seems like the opposite, as if it went like so. Which was also the fashion throughout the 19th century for some hats. But not so much from the 18th. Well, it depends, you know. It is not, some people, it is easy to get into conclusions of saying, oh, well, in the 1910s and 20s, hats were like that, in the 1830s they were like that, but then they all became like that. There were always these changes. There was never one way of making it. But how does one know it is from the 1910s and not the 1830s or before? Is judging all the components together and thus coming up with the most likely dating. And also, since that hat is completely in the original state and almost new-like, it is very obvious that due to the font, due to the also maker, and also the street it was made in, which is Piccadilly Circus, 429 Strand, 54 and 56 Oxford Street, London. All black silk, patent number 29645 and then /14982/11. So obviously, and also with the material, the manner in which the silk is made in the inside lining, all these components together give the most likely dating. And this is not where it was made. This is actually they made it for that person, or no, probably no. This is where the shop was. So, but constant. That is the reason for which in movies, as I said, for Gangs of New York, people would say, oh, we cannot find, for instance, these 1830s hats that were often of that shape, overall crown shape. Because they are too old, they do not fit the actors, but they could use something much newer, but still very old, like this hat. And then, even if they wanted to go more deeply into the little details that were marked as an 1830s hat, especially that they would not have to bother for the inside. Surely they will not film the inside. They could simply replace the band, for instance, that was usually not a cloth band in the 1830s, and replace it with a small strip. But now I'm getting a little bit... But obviously, even in the 1830s, the shape will not be identical to that, but I'm simply talking about the overall aesthetic of said shapes. Well, obviously, there were a billion different shapes and a billion different types of dimensions according to brim types and according to the shape of the brim and to how the curling of the brim was done, the D'Orsay curl was done. In this instance, since it is a British hat, like that one, both British hats, this one is simply probably about 40 years newer. See that the D'Orsay curl is practically the same, because on some hats where the top hats are not, it goes more, you see, it curls up upon itself like this one. They curl it, but then imagine this is, my hand is the brim, it starts all flat. They curl it, D'Orsay curl with a tolica, and then to curl it even more, so it goes like that. And on that one they did so ever so slightly. See, it is not quite straight, unlike in the forepart. The forepart is the hardest to do because it is completely curled onto itself. So on the sides it is a little bit more than 180 degrees curl, a little bit more, perhaps 183, 5, whatever. But there, from my understanding, it is 180 degree also there, not 360, but it is really, because it is so tight and done with the knotted tolica. But compare to that hat, the 1920s one, I guess this is more mid to late 20s actually, not 1910s. 1910s would be more the first one I had ever bought when I was a child, so it is very much too small. But it is similar to that one, but it seems a little bit older. But well, there it is flatter, see? The D'Orsay curl. Oh no, not really. But it ever so gives the impression of perhaps, I'm not sure if the D'Orsay curling in itself is flatter or if it is because they curl the brim. It may be because they curl the brim. But the more they curl it, the brim in itself, I mean not the edge of the brim, because when we say D'Orsay brim binding curl, we rarely mean the edge of the brim. If the entire brim had been D'Orsay curled, then it would be like that, which on some various unique hats were kind of, yeah, on some it was way more of the brim had been curled. But there, one is really talking about the brim edge, but now the brim in itself is clearly curled to a certain degree, and clearly more here than it is there. Now also some fellows would amuse themselves by, you know, to make it look more old school or change the styling simply. Curl this more. Now if one tried to change that shape also perhaps, but I really like to keep things as they were intended to be, and the more things are old and the more one intends to wear them heavily, the more one should do that if one desires them to last any amount of time. I'm not talking lasting 10 years obviously, but I'm talking at least not breaking everything on the spot. And anyhow, it shall never be exactly the same as something from the 1890s, because first of all, they probably use different materials and all, by the different construction techniques. But especially, because that barely shows, even to an expert like I would have to be an expert at the construction, which I'm far from, more an expert in the styling of it. But even more so, the dimension would never be quite exactly the same, you know what I mean? I mean, it might still be shorter, I would still have to change this. Now, apparently, Dan from, the expert in top hats says that he thinks from probably the 1890s, his British hats started having morning bands. They were not morning bands, but cloth bands, because it will always make the silk look shinier than a silk band, which I do understand, but in American hats they started doing this later on, and probably also in French hats. But anyhow, because it is so, the shape, the overall shape, really points it out to I would say mid to late 20s, especially inside. Inside is good to judge, especially when the inside is intact, like in there, because it is so white. Back in those days, this was probably white initially, now it is all dirty and can't really be washed, will have to be replaced. I also dirtied it more. And also this is never strong, this will never last a long time, the silk on the side, let my touch it. Kind of feels the same. This feels drier because it is older. This has a slightly different pattern whereby it looks like it's splashed with water, because this is a more even pattern. It's a little bit different waffle silk, at least.